The rain had not stopped all night. It came down in heavy sheets over 17th Avenue, drenching the city of Portland in a quiet, endless grey. The digital clock on the bus shelter flashed 1:03 a.m. The final bus had come and gone hours ago. No taxis passed, no footsteps echoed, only the sound of rain. Rowan Keller sat alone on the cold concrete bench, her body hunched inside a soaked, pale blue work uniform. The sleeves were rolled up from a long shift, the fabric stiff from sugar and butter. Her hair clung to her cheeks, and her shoes made a soft squish with every slight move. She hugged her backpack tightly to her chest, as if the worn-out canvas could shield her from the world. The streetlights flickered. The world had gone silent. Rowan should have left work at 10, but she had stayed behind to help clean up after a new co-worker got sick halfway through her shift. That was how things always were. She helped. She stayed. Then she waited alone for a bus that no longer came. She checked her phone. Dead. She sighed and closed her eyes, leaning her head back against the cold metal of the shelter. "You planning to sit here until sunrise?" The voice startled her. It was deep calm and strangely clear through the sound of rain. Rowan opened her eyes. A man stood just outside the shelter holding a black umbrella. His jacket was soaked at the shoulders, and his jeans were marked with rain. She could not see his face clearly at first, only the shape of him, tall, still steady. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice hoarse from cold and silence. "You missed the last one," he said. "I did the same thing once. Thought another bus would come. It didn't." She studied him carefully. His voice wasn't threatening. His stance wasn't aggressive. But she still clutched her bag a little tighter. "I'll manage," she said. "You look like you've already been managing too long." Rowan stood slowly, her legs stiff. "Look, I don't know you." "I know. I'm not trying to scare you," he said. "My car's right over there. It's dry, it's warm. I'm not offering anything but a ride and a chance to get out of the rain." "Who are you?" she asked. "Beckham," he replied. "Beckham Roads. I fix things. Street lamps mostly." She frowned. Not a CEO, not a doctor. Just a man in a soaked jacket with hands tucked into his pockets and eyes that looked like they had seen too much. The silence stretched between them. Then Rowan took one step forward, then another. "Where's your car?" she asked. Beckham's car was not fancy. An older model Jeep, clean but worn with a heater that clicked every few minutes and a faint smell of leather and pine. Rowan sat in the passenger seat, her hands pressed between her thighs for warmth. She hadn't realised how numb her fingers were until they started to tingle. Beckham drove without speaking at first. He did not ask her name. He did not glance her way. "You hungry?" he finally asked. She hesitated. Her stomach answered for her with a quiet growl. He gave a small smile. "There's a diner 2 blocks from here, open all night. I'm going anyway." Rowan didn't argue. The thought of warmth, food, and a place with real light was too tempting. The diner was nearly empty. Yellow booths. A jukebox that hadn't worked in years. A tired-looking waitress with a kind face brought them each a bowl of chicken soup and warm biscuits. Rowan stared at the steam rising from the bowl before finally lifting the spoon. Beckham sat across from her, sipping coffee, watching the rain streak down the window behind her. "You said you fix street lamps," she said quietly. He nodded. "Used to be an electrician. Now I mostly do freelance repairs for the city. Things no one notices until they stop working." She dipped her biscuit into the soup. "How long have you been doing that?" "Long enough." She didn't push. She understood the weight behind short answers. Some stories took time. "And you?" he asked. "Baker Dawn," she said. "Well, assistant baker. Midnight shifts. Lots of flour. Not much money." "Good bread can change a day," he replied. She looked at him then. Really looked. He wasn't handsome in a traditional way. There was a tiredness in his face, but something solid too. A quiet calm, like a person who had survived a storm and still chose to stay standing in the rain. She finished her soup in silence. When she looked up, he was already paying the bill. "You didn't have to." "I know," he said. He drove her home without asking for an address. She gave it to him anyway. When they arrived, she expected a goodbye, maybe an awkward pause. But instead, he just said, "Next time bring an umbrella." Or call someone. Anyone. I don't usually have anyone to call. He looked at her for a long moment, then reached into his jacket and pulled out a small slip of paper. His handwriting was clean, simple. Beckham Rhodes fixes things. Or at least tries. Number written clearly. Rowan took the paper. Said nothing. The next morning, she tucked it inside a book she hadn't finished. She told herself she would never use it, but she didn't throw it away. The first time Rowan saw him again, it was 3 days later. She had just finished an early shift flower still on her elbows, hair tied up in a messy knot when she spotted him through the glass of the corner cafe across from her bakery. He was sitting at a table alone, reading an old paperback, a cup of black coffee in front of him. She paused outside. He looked up. Their eyes met. No wave. No smile. Just a quiet recognition. Rowan walked on. The second time was the following week. It was raining again. She had ducked into the local laundromat to dry her soaked apron. He was there folding a pile of old towels with calm efficiency. This time he did speak. You always forget an umbrella. You always hang around random laundromats. He shrugged. Sometimes towels need folding. She rolled her eyes, but her lips curved. From then on, it happened more often. Sometimes she would find a small brown paper bag waiting on the bakery counter when she arrived. Inside a lemon muffin, a bottle of cold brew, a sticky note that read simply, "Eat, please, no name," but she knew. Other times she would spot him sitting across the street after his late-night repair shifts watching the bakery, from the hood of his Jeep, hands in his jacket, not saying a word. They never labelled it. They didn't go on dates. But sometimes she would step outside after locking up, and he would be there, waiting, holding out a paper cup of warm tea. And they would walk side by side without touching. She started telling him things in pieces, about how she was once accepted into a culinary program but couldn't afford to go, about her mother who used to bake with her when she was little then disappeared like smoke, about how she hated hospitals and silence and people who only showed up when it was convenient. Beckham listened. Always. Never rushed her. Never pitied her. And once when she mentioned offhandedly how her favourite book had gone out of print, he showed up 2 nights later and handed it to her without a word. The corners were bent, the spine cracked. It was perfect. "Where did you find this?" she asked, startled. "Just fixed a flickering street lamp behind an old bookstore," he said. "They were giving it away." She didn't believe him, but she did not say no when he asked her very quietly if she wanted to see where he worked sometimes. The workshop was tucked behind a warehouse on the edge of the city. No sign out front, just a faded green door, a rusted mailbox and a cracked sidewalk that led nowhere else. Inside it smelled like oil and dust and cedar. Rowan stood in the middle of the room, surrounded by shelves of light bulbs, old tools, pieces of broken fixtures arranged like puzzles in progress. On one wall hung a large corkboard pinned with handwritten notes and photographs, city corners, alleyways, intersections at night. "These are all the places you've fixed?" she asked, stepping closer. "Not fixed," Beckham said from behind her. "Still fixing." She turned. He was standing by a workbench, sleeves rolled up, sanding a piece of wood with quiet focus. "You keep records." "I keep promises," he replied. Rowan frowned. "To who?" He didn't answer. She let it go, walked the edge of the room slowly. There was something tender in the space, something personal, like he had built a life out of pieces everyone else had thrown away. On the far table sat a small lamp, delicate vintage, the kind her mother once used during late-night sewing. It was broken, its cord frayed. Next to it lay a new switch, a roll of copper wire and a tiny tag, property of M. Keller. Her breath caught. That was my mum's," she whispered. "We donated it to a second-hand place years ago. I never thought I didn't plan it," he said gently. "I saw it in the back of a repair shop near Hawthorne. The initials caught my eye." He met her gaze for the first time that night. "I wasn't looking for it," he added. "But maybe it was looking for you." Rowan sat down on a crate, heart suddenly too full. Beckham walked over and crouched in front of her, placing the lamp in her lap. "I don't know what this means," she said softly. Maybe nothing, he said. Maybe everything. She looked at him. Not the jacket or the calloused hands, not the tired eyes, just the person beneath it all. And for the first time she let the silence between them stretch without fear. Winter came late that year, but when it arrived it did not hold back. Rowan woke one morning to find the city glazed in ice. Her breath fogged in the kitchen as she poured coffee. The bakery had no heat, and her manager had cancelled all shifts for the weekend. She stood by the window watching the frost crawl across the glass like spiderwebs. At noon, a knock came. Beckham stood in the hallway holding a paper bag in one hand and a wool scarf in the other. "You'll need both," he said, stepping inside without asking. She raised an eyebrow. "What's in the bag?" "Soup," he said. "Well, soup ingredients. I figured we could make something here instead of eating alone again." They moved around her small kitchen like two people who had done it before. He peeled carrots. She found garlic. The conversation was minimal, filled with small glances, soft gestures. When the pot finally simmered, they sat across from each other at the tiny table, steam rising between them. It felt almost normal, but normal was never the whole story. After lunch, Rowan noticed a folder peeking out of Beckham's coat pocket. She reached for it without thinking. He stopped her hand gently. "What is it?" she asked, eyes narrowing. "Just something for later," he said. "You never answer directly." "That's not true." "Yes, it is," she said. Her voice wasn't angry, just tired. "You always listen. You give. You show up. But you never let anyone in." Beckham said nothing. She leaned back in her chair. "Do you even want me here?" He looked at her sharply as if startled by the question. "I want you here," he said too quickly. "You know that. Then why does it still feel like I'm just visiting your life?" Beckham stood, walked to the window. His shoulders looked heavier than usual. "Because everyone I've ever let in has left." Rowan's breath hitched. "I'm not everyone." "I know," he said quietly. "That's what makes it hard." She rose slowly and came to stand beside him. Their reflections stood side by side in the glass distorted by frost. "I'm not here for soup and kindness," she said. "I'm here because somewhere in between broken lamps and leftover muffins you made me feel safe. And that doesn't happen for me." He turned to her, his voice low. "I don't know how to need someone out loud." "You don't have to," she said. "But you do have to try." Silence stretched. Then she did what she had not done before. She reached for his hand. He didn't pull away. But he didn't grip back either. And that somehow said more than words ever could. It happened on a Tuesday. Rowan collapsed in the middle of her shift at the bakery, her body folding like paper between the ovens and the prep table. Her co-workers said she had not eaten all day, that she had stayed late the night before to cover someone else's work, that she had barely slept the past week. By the time the ambulance arrived, her skin was pale and cold. There was no emergency contact listed, no family nearby, but someone still showed up. Beckham arrived at the hospital within 30 minutes. No one had called him. He had simply been nearby, fixing a faulty light outside the pharmacy across the street, and saw the flashing lights. When he entered her hospital room, Rowan was unconscious, an IV in her arm and oxygen at her nose. She looked small beneath the sheets, her hair spread across the pillow, like something spilled and forgotten. He stood in the doorway for a long time before stepping in. Then he sat beside her and took her hand gently, like it might break. It was cold. He held it between both of his. Hours passed. Nurses came and went. Beckham did not move. When Rowan stirred, her voice was barely a breath. "You look worried," she whispered. "You passed out," he said, his jaw tight. "You were severely dehydrated, underfed, overworked." She blinked slowly, eyes cloudy. "It's not a big deal." His voice snapped sharp, low controlled. "It is to me." She tried to sit up, winced and stopped. "You didn't have to come." "I did," he said. "You didn't." "Rowan," he said, and this time her name cracked in his throat. "I don't know what we are, but I know I can't sit back and watch you break." She looked away, pain flashing in her expression. "I never asked for help," she said. "I don't want to be someone you feel sorry for." "You're not," he said. "You're someone I—" He stopped. The words stalled, locked. Rowan turned back to him, her voice trembling. "Then say it." He looked at her eyes, storm-dark and helpless, but he didn't speak. And that was when she knew. She pulled her hand from his gently, slowly, like removing a thread that had been tied too tight. "Thank you for coming," she said, barely above a whisper. "But I think I need more than what you can give." She looked away. He sat there still silent. When she was discharged the next day, he did not come back. And she didn't wait. The apartment felt hollow without her. Beckham moved through it like a man underwater. The blanket she always curled up with still hung over the back of the couch. Her mug sat in the sink, a faint ring of dried tea still inside. The book she had left open on page 237 stayed untouched on the nightstand, the folded corner still waiting for her return. He had not touched any of it. In his workshop, he left the lamp she loved unfinished. At work, he made mistakes, simple ones. Miswiring a fixture, forgetting which street needed repairs. His tools stayed packed longer than they ever had before. His co-workers noticed. So did the silence. Beckham had always lived with quiet. He used to prefer it. But now the silence felt different. Now it hurt. The number she had once used to text him random thoughts during her bakery breaks, quotes from books, photos of bread gone wrong, blurry sunsets stayed cold. No new messages. No accidental emojis. He stood by the window late at night, staring out toward the street lamp across from her building. The one he had fixed 3 times even when it wasn't broken. It still worked, still glowed soft amber, but she was gone, and he didn't know where. One afternoon, his assistant at City Maintenance came into the office holding a clipboard. "Beckham," she said, hesitant. "The donation came through. The scholarship in her name. You sure you don't want your name on the paperwork?" "No," he said. "She won't know you did this." He nodded. "Do you want her to?" "I want her to keep going," he said simply. "Even if it's not with me." Later that evening, Beckham walked into his office, sat at his desk and stared at a photograph pinned beside the workshop blueprints. It was of Rowan, laughing with a bite of croissant in her hand. He had taken it when she wasn't looking. Beside it, he had placed the lamp. Finished now. Clean. Working. He switched it on. The light hummed quietly. And for the first time since she left, Beckham whispered into the room, "You saved me, you know." But the room did not answer. A year passed. Rowan had moved north to a smaller city where the air smelled like pine, and the streets still had cracks in them. She worked at a local cafe now, not a bakery exactly, but close. She managed the morning shift, trained younger staff, and baked just enough to remember what she loved about it all. People here called her Miss Rowan and brought her baskets of berries in the summer. She lived in a quiet apartment above a bookstore, and on most nights she fell asleep with a book on her chest and the window open just enough to hear the wind. She didn't talk about Portland much, but sometimes when she stood alone behind the counter, she still thought about a man with quiet eyes and rough hands who fixed street lamps that didn't need fixing just to watch over her from a distance. Then one morning she got a call. Her former landlord had forwarded a package sent months ago, delayed, forgotten. Inside was a book. Her book, the one she had left on page 237. The folded corner was still there, but tucked inside was a small photograph. A lamp, restored, working. And next to it, written on the back in a handwriting she recognised instantly, "You were never a guest in my life. I just didn't know how to ask you to stay." Her breath caught. Rowan closed the book slowly. That night she packed a bag. Portland had not changed much. It was still grey, still rainy, still familiar in the way cities you leave never quite stop calling you back. She didn't go to the bakery or the cafe. She went to the workshop. It was late when she got there. Lights off, door locked. But the old Jeep was parked outside. She knocked once. No answer. She waited, then turned to leave. But the door opened. Beckham stood there, older somehow, as if the months had left lines behind. But his eyes were the same, unmoving, unspoken. For a long moment they just looked at each other. Then he said the same words he had once said long ago under different rain. "You're coming with me." But this time his voice cracked. And this time she smiled. "If you still want me," she said. "I never stopped." He stepped back and she entered. The lamp was still on, still glowing soft against the corkboard and shelves and unfinished repairs. Her picture was still there too, beside it now, not above it. She reached for his hand. This time he held on. 6 months later, they moved into a house with creaky floors and wide windows. A place with a garden where light touched every corner. Her books filled one wall, his tools the other. The lamp sat in the middle, always on. They never labelled what they were, but they did not need to, because sometimes the love that saves you does not arrive loudly. It shows up late at night with soup and silence. It stands in the doorway of your hardest moments and never asks for anything in return. It waits, then it learns, then it stays.